The thunder of hoofbeats shattered the morning silence as Emma pressed herself deeper into her mother's trembling arms behind the jagged boulder. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, while dust clouds billowed across the Wyoming plains, marking the relentless pursuit of Callahan's men. The 8-year-old girl's fingers dug into her mother's worn dress, her wide brown eyes reflecting terror as the riders drew closer. "Mama, they're coming," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible above the pounding of horses. Maya pulled her daughter tighter, feeling the child's small body shake against her own. The acrid smell of sweat and fear mingled with the sage-scented air as she peered around the rock's edge. 3 riders approached their hiding spot, their faces hard as granite beneath wide-brimmed hats. Morrison, Callahan's most ruthless enforcer, reined in his stallion mere yards from their sanctuary. His scarred face twisted into a cruel smile as he dismounted, spurs jangling with each deliberate step. Come out, little widow," Morrison called, his voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Boss Callahan's got plans for you and that pretty daughter of yours. No sense hiding like scared rabbits." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Emma's small hand found hers squeezing with surprising strength for such tiny fingers. The child's courage in the face of terror reminded Maya of someone she'd lost long ago, though the memory remained frustratingly elusive. "Papa, where are you?" Emma whispered so softly only her mother could hear. The question pierced Maya's heart. Emma had started calling for this mysterious Papa weeks ago, though Maya had never told her daughter about any father figure. The child seemed to be reaching for someone who existed only in dreams and half-remembered fragments. Morrison's boots crunched closer on the rocky ground. "Tell you what, ladies. You come out peaceful-like, and maybe we won't drag you back to town tied up like cattle. Boss has been real patient, but his patience is wearing thin as creek ice in spring." Maya closed her eyes, fighting back tears. 2 months ago, she'd fled eastward with Emma after her husband's death, following whispered rumors of work at a ranch owned by a man called Red Bear. The Cheyenne warrior had a reputation for fairness, for protecting those who had nowhere else to turn. But they'd never made it that far. Callahan's men had found them first. A new sound cut through the air, a whistle low and haunting, carrying notes that seemed to dance on the wind. Morrison's head snapped up, his cocky expression flickering with uncertainty. "What in the hell?" he muttered, scanning the horizon. The whistle came again, closer this time, followed by the soft drumbeat of a single horse approaching at a measured pace. A figure emerged from the heat shimmer, like something born from the earth itself. A Cheyenne warrior, riding a painted stallion, his long black hair adorned with eagle feathers that caught the morning light. Red Bear. Even from their hiding place, Maya could see the intricate beadwork on his leather vest, the sacred symbols painted across his high cheekbones, and the weathered war lance resting across his saddle. This was a man shaped by loss and hardened by survival. Yet something in his posture suggested a deep, abiding strength that went beyond physical prowess. Well, Brum," Morrison drawled, though his hand had already moved to rest on his gun belt. "If it ain't the savage himself, you lost Redskin, and this here's white man's business." Red Bear's dark eyes swept the scene, taking in every detail. The nervous horses, the hidden tracks leading to the boulder, the way Morrison's companions had positioned themselves for a fight. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of mountains and the patience of seasons. "And this is Cheyenne land. Has been for generations beyond your counting. You are the ones who are lost." Morrison spat into the dust. "Not according to Callahan's deed. This whole stretch belongs to him now, fair and square. We're just collecting what's owed." "And what debt could a woman and child possibly owe your boss?" "The woman owes him a wedding. The girl owes him service for her keep. Simple business transaction." Emma's grip on Maya's hand tightened to the point of pain. Red Bear's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him, like the moment before lightning strikes. "I see no willing bride here," Red Bear said quietly. Only predators hunting prey. Morrison's laugh was harsh as winter wind. Willing don't matter much when you owe what they owe. Besides, what's it to you? Stick to your own kind, savage. Red Bear's stallion stepped forward without any visible command from its rider. The horse moved with the fluid grace of a hunting cat, placing itself between the armed men and the boulder, where Maya and Emma hid. My kind. Red Bear repeated thoughtfully. My kind protects children from men like you. My kind honors the sacred bond between mother and daughter. My kind remembers when this land knew peace. Morrison's patience snapped. His hand flashed toward his gun, but the movement died before it began. Red Bear hadn't drawn any weapon, but the war lance had somehow shifted in his grip, its steel point now reflecting sunlight directly into Morrison's eyes. You're making a mistake, Redskin. Callahan's got backing you can't imagine. Government backing, army backing. You interfere with our business, and you'll bring hell down on whatever's left of your people. For the first time, Red Bear smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. My people survived your army before. We survived your government before. We'll survive you. Behind the boulder, Emma stirred in her mother's arms. Mama, she whispered. He sounds like the man in my dreams. The one with the feathers who calls me Little Star. Maya's blood ran cold. Emma had been having those dreams for months, always about a Cheyenne warrior who sang to her in a language she shouldn't know. Maya had dismissed them as childhood imagination, but hearing her daughter's words now, Morrison was reaching for his rifle when Red Bear moved. The war lance left his hand in a fluid arc, embedding itself in the ground, inches from Morrison's feet, with enough force to crack the hard-pan soil. The message was unmistakable. Next time. Red Bear said conversationally, I won't miss on purpose. Morrison's face flushed purple with rage, but his companions were already backing their horses away. They'd heard stories about the Cheyenne warrior who'd held off cavalry units single-handedly, who could track a whisper across stone and fight like the spirits themselves guided his hands. This ain't over, savage. Callahan don't forget and he don't forgive. You just bought yourself a war. Wars end, Red Bear replied. Men like you do not. Morrison spurred his horse viciously, wheeling away from the confrontation. His men followed, but not before one of them called back a threat about returning with reinforcements. Their hoofbeats faded into the distance, leaving only dust and the lingering scent of fear sweat. Red Bear dismounted and walked to where his lance stood quivering in the earth. He pulled it free with one smooth motion, then turned toward the boulder. You can come out now, he said gently. They're gone. Maya hesitated, then stepped into view with Emma pressed against her side. The child's eyes were enormous as she stared up at the Cheyenne warrior, and Maya was startled to see recognition flicker across her daughter's face. It's you, Emma breathed. You're the man with the feathers, the one who sings the star song. Red Bear went very still, his dark eyes fixed on Emma's face with an intensity that made Maya step protectively in front of her daughter. But there was no threat in his gaze, only a dawning wonder that seemed to shake him to his core. What did you say? His voice was barely above a whisper. Emma tilted her head, studying him with the fearless curiosity of childhood. You sing about stars dancing in the sky, about finding the way home when everything is dark. Papa, don't you remember? The war lance slipped from Red Bear's nerveless fingers, clattering against stone. Maya watched alarmed as the color drained from the warrior's face. He dropped to one knee, bringing himself to Emma's eye level, his hands trembling as they reached toward her. Little Star, he whispered in Cheyenne, then switched to English. How do you know that song? Who taught you those words? Emma stepped closer, her small hand touching the eagle feather in his hair. Nobody taught me. I just remember. You used to sing it when I was scared, when the bad dreams came. Red Bear's breath caught audibly. His eyes were fixed on something hanging around Emma's neck. a small pendant Maya had never seen before, though the child had worn it as long as she could remember. It was a tiny dream catcher, its webbing intricate beyond belief, with a single blue bead at its center. "Where did you get that?" Red Bear's voice was hoarse with emotion he couldn't hide. Emma looked down at the pendant, then back up at him with perfect trust. "It was always mine. Mama said I had it when she found me by the creek. She said the spirits must have left it to keep me safe." Maya's world tilted on its axis. "Found you, Emma? What are you talking about? You're my daughter. You've always been my daughter." But even as she spoke, the words doubt crept into her voice. Emma had appeared in her life during the darkest period after Maya's husband had been killed, and she'd fled across the territory in a haze of grief. She'd found the child wandering alone by a creek, no more than 3 years old, with no memory of how she'd gotten there. Maya had taken her in without question, desperate for purpose and meaning in her shattered life. Red Bear stood slowly, his movements careful and measured. "That dream catcher belonged to my wife. She made it for our daughter before—" His voice broke. "Before soldiers came to our village. Before they killed her and took my child." The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications too vast to fully grasp. Emma looked from Red Bear to Maya, and back again, her young mind trying to process revelations that would challenge everything she'd ever believed about herself. "Papa," she said again, but this time the word carried weight and recognition. Red Bear nodded, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "Yes, little star, I am your father. I searched for you for 5 years. I never stopped believing you were alive." Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. The daughter she'd raised and loved was not her own. The child who'd brought light back into her dark world belonged to someone else. But as she watched Emma's face light up with joy and recognition, she realized something profound. Love wasn't about blood or birth. It was about choice, about protection, about the bonds forged in adversity. "Then I have 2 parents," Emma declared with the straightforward logic of childhood. "Papa Red Bear and Mama Maya. That makes me twice as lucky as other children." Red Bear's eyes met Maya's over Emma's head. In that moment, they shared an understanding that transcended words. Whatever had brought them together, fate, chance, or the intervention of spirits, they were now bound by something stronger than genetics or obligation. They were bound by love for this remarkable child who had somehow found her way home. But their reunion was interrupted by the distant sound of hoofbeats returning. Morrison hadn't gone far, and he was bringing friends. "We need to leave," Red Bear said urgently. "My ranch is half a day's ride north. We'll be safe there while we figure out what to do about Callahan." Maya gathered their few possessions while Red Bear helped Emma onto his painted stallion. The child settled into the saddle as if she'd been born to it, her small hands confident on the reins, despite her young age. "Will you teach me the other songs?" Emma asked as they prepared to ride. "The ones from before I forgot." Red Bear's smile was brighter than sunrise. "I'll teach you all of them, little star, and new ones too. Songs of your people and your heritage." As they rode toward the safety of Red Bear's ranch, none of them noticed the figure watching from a distant ridge. Callahan himself had come to observe his cold eyes, tracking their movements with predatory interest. He'd heard enough of their conversation to understand the situation, and his calculating mind was already working on ways to use this new information to his advantage. The game had changed, but Callahan was a man who adapted quickly to changing circumstances. If the widow had found protection with the Cheyenne warrior, then he'd simply have to remove that protection. And if the child was truly Red Bear's daughter, then she represented leverage he hadn't possessed before. Callahan smiled as he turned his horse back toward town. Morrison's failure had been frustrating, but sometimes setbacks revealed opportunities that success would have obscured. Soon, he'd have everything he wanted: the woman, the child, and the satisfaction of crushing the man who dared to defy him. The chase was far from over. If anything, it had just begun. Red Bear's ranch, nestled in a hidden valley that seemed untouched by the harsh realities of the outside world. Ancient cottonwoods lined a crystal-clear stream, their leaves whispering secrets in languages older than memory. The main house was built from local stone and timber blending seamlessly with the landscape, as if it had grown from the earth itself. Emma's eyes were wide with wonder as they approached. "It's like the place in my dreams," she said softly, "where the horses run free and the eagles dance." Maya felt a deep peace settle over her as they rode into the valley. This place felt like sanctuary, like home in a way nowhere had since her husband's death. But she couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were far from over. Red Bear helped them dismount near the main house, where an elderly Cheyenne woman emerged to greet them. Her hair was silver white, braided with colorful ribbons, and her eyes held the wisdom of decades spent living close to the natural world. "Blue Owl," Red Bear said respectfully, "I'd like you to meet Maya and—" He paused, emotion thick in his voice. "And my daughter Emma." Blue Owl's weathered face transformed with joy. She knelt before Emma, studying the child's features with eyes that missed nothing. "Little singing star," she whispered in Cheyenne. "You've come home at last." Emma stepped forward without hesitation, as if she'd known this woman all her life. Blue Owl embraced her gently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I helped bring you into this world," Blue Owl told Emma in English. "I wove the protection chants into your dream catcher. I never stopped praying for your return." Maya watched the reunion with mixed emotions. Joy for Emma's happiness warred with a growing sense of displacement. Where did she fit in this newfound family? What role could she play in a world she didn't fully understand? Red Bear seemed to sense her uncertainty. "You saved her," he said quietly. "You kept her alive when I couldn't. You gave her love and protection when she needed it most. That makes you family too." "But I'm not Cheyenne," Maya protested. "I don't know your ways, your customs. I don't want to interfere with Emma's connection to her heritage." Blue Owl looked up from where she'd been showing Emma a traditional hand game. "Family isn't just about blood or tradition," the elder said with gentle authority. "It's about love that transcends difference. You've been this child's mother in every way that matters. That bond cannot be broken by the revelation of origins." Emma nodded vigorously. "I want both my families. I want to learn Cheyenne songs from Papa and English stories from Mama. I want to know how to braid my hair like Blue Owl and how to make biscuits like Mama taught me." Red Bear knelt beside his daughter, his expression serious but warm. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll honor both parts of who you are, the Cheyenne star daughter and the pioneer girl who survived against all odds." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of another rider. Little Wolf Red Bear's second-in-command galloped into the valley with news written clearly across his grim features. "Trouble coming," he announced without preamble. "Callahan's gathering men in town. Maybe 20 riders, maybe more. Word is he's planning something big." Red Bear stood, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. "How long do we have?" "Day, maybe 2. But there's more." Little Wolf glanced meaningfully at Emma before continuing. "He's been asking questions about the child. Specific questions. Someone told him about the conversation at the boulder." Maya felt ice form in her veins. If Callahan knew about Emma's connection to Red Bear, he'd use that knowledge as a weapon. The child would become a target leveraged to force Red Bear's submission. "We need to send Emma away," Maya said immediately. "Somewhere safe until this is resolved." "No." Emma's voice was small but determined. "I won't run away again. I've been running my whole life without knowing why. If there's going to be a fight, I want to be with my family." Red Bear studied his daughter's face, seeing determination that reminded him powerfully of her mother. "It's too dangerous, little star. These men won't hesitate to hurt you if it serves their purposes." "Then teach me to protect myself," Emma said simply. "Teach me to be strong like you are." Blue Owl smiled approvingly. "The child has warrior spirit. Perhaps it's time she learned warrior skills." Maya wanted to protest, to wrap Emma in cotton and hide her from the harsh realities of their situation. But looking at her daughter's face, she realized that Emma had already been shaped by hardship. The child had survived abandonment, displacement, and the constant uncertainty of life on the frontier. She was stronger than Maya had given her credit for. "What did you have in mind?" Maya asked reluctantly. Red Bear exchanged a look with Blue Owl and Little Wolf. "There's an old Cheyenne training ground deeper in the valley. Sacred place where warriors prepared for battle and children learned the skills they'd need to survive. If Emma truly wants to understand her heritage, that's where she should start." Over the next day, Emma threw herself into learning with the enthusiasm only children possess. Blue Owl taught her traditional prayers and songs, while Little Wolf showed her how to move silently through tall grass and identify tracks. Red Bear worked with her on horseback riding and basic awareness skills. Maya found herself learning alongside her daughter, gaining insight into a culture she'd only known through frontier stereotypes and government propaganda. The reality was far more complex and beautiful than she'd ever imagined. A society built on harmony with nature, respect for elders, and the understanding that all life was interconnected. But their peaceful interlude couldn't last. On the second morning, Little Wolf returned from a scouting mission with urgent news. "They're coming," he announced grimly. 23 riders all armed. Callahan's leading them personally. Red Bear gathered his small band of allies. Little Wolf, 2 other Cheyenne warriors named Hawk Shadow and Running Elk, and Maya herself. Against more than 20 armed men, their chances seemed impossibly slim. "There's another option," Blue Owl said quietly. "The old mine shaft at the north end of the valley. It connects to a network of caves that lead to the sacred canyon. Emma could hide there while you deal with Callahan." Red Bear shook his head. "Those tunnels are unstable. Parts of them are flooded, others have pockets of bad air. It's too dangerous." "And more dangerous than facing Callahan's guns?" Maya asked pointedly. Before Red Bear could answer, Emma spoke up. "I dreamed about those caves," she said with quiet certainty. "Last night I dreamed about following blue lights through dark tunnels. There was singing like the mountain itself was calling me home." Blue Owl's eyes widened. "The spirit lights. I haven't heard of them appearing for decades. They only show themselves to those with true connection to the sacred places." Red Bear looked torn between his protective instincts and his respect for the spiritual traditions of his people. "Even if the spirits are guiding her, I can't bear the thought of Emma facing that danger alone." "She won't be alone," Maya said firmly. "I'll go with her. We'll keep each other safe." Little Wolf had been watching the approach of Callahan's men through a spyglass. "Decision time," he announced. "They'll be here within the hour." Red Bear knelt before Emma one more time, his hands gentle on her small shoulders. "Listen to me, little star. If you go into those caves, you must promise to be careful. Follow the spirit lights, but don't take unnecessary risks. If the way becomes too dangerous, turn back. Do you understand?" Emma nodded solemnly. "I understand, Papa. But I also understand that some things are worth the risk. This valley is our home. These people are our family. I won't let bad men take that away." Red Bear pulled her into a fierce embrace, memorizing the feel of his daughter in his arms. When he released her, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Go," he said quietly. "And may the spirits watch over you both." Maya gathered their few essential supplies, while Blue Owl prepared traditional traveling bundles: dried meat, parched corn, and medicinal herbs wrapped in soft doe skin. She also gave Emma a small pouch containing sacred items. These will help you find your way, the elder explained. Sage for purification, sweetgrass for calling helpful spirits, and a piece of turquoise from the heart of the sacred mountain. Keep them close. Emma tucked the pouch inside her dress next to the dream catcher that had never left her neck. Will you be safe, Blue Owl? I've survived 93 winters, child. I don't plan to let Callahan end my story. They made their way to the mine entrance as the sound of approaching horses grew louder. The shaft had been dug by desperate prospectors decades earlier, then abandoned when the vein played out. Nature had begun reclaiming it, but the entrance was still passable. Red Bear helped them down the initial slope, then pressed a torch into Maya's hands. Follow the main tunnel until it branches. Take the left passage. It leads toward the sacred canyon. And Maya. He caught her hand, his grip warm and strong. Thank you. For everything. For saving her, for bringing her home, for being the mother she needed. Maya felt tears threaten. Just make sure you're here when we come back. Emma needs her father. Papa. Emma called softly from the tunnel entrance. What's my Cheyenne name, my real one? Red Bear smiled despite the danger closing in around them. Mahpe Wikapi, dancing star, because you brought light back into my dark world. Emma, Mahpe Wikapi, grinned with delight. Dancing star, I like that. It feels like me. She disappeared into the tunnel with Maya close behind. Red Bear watched until their torchlight faded, then turned to face the approaching storm. Callahan's men thundered into the valley like a plague of locusts, their horses churning the peaceful grass into muddy chaos. The man himself rode at their head. Tall, lean, and cold-eyed, with the look of someone who'd never met a problem he couldn't solve with violence. Red Bear stepped out to meet them, flanked by Little Wolf and his other warriors. They were outnumbered more than 5 to 1, but they stood with the calm dignity of men defending their home. Callahan. Red Bear said evenly, You're trespassing on private land. Callahan's smile was sharp as a blade. Private, according to who? Far as I know, this valley don't belong to nobody in particular. Certainly don't belong to a handful of savages. According to the treaty your government signed 5 years ago. This land was granted to me in recognition of services rendered to the United States Army. Callahan's expression flickered with annoyance. He'd clearly hoped to claim ignorance of Red Bear's legal status. Treaties change, circumstances change. What matters is what's best for progress and civilization. And what would that be? This valley's got good water, good grass, good mineral deposits. Wasted on a handful of Indians playing at being ranchers. I'm prepared to offer you fair compensation for vacating the property. Red Bear's laugh held no humor. The same kind of fair compensation you offered Maya marriage by force and child labor. Morrison, still smarting from his earlier humiliation, urged his horse forward. Boss, let me handle this, Redskin. Won't take but a minute. Callahan held up a restraining hand. Not yet, Morrison. I want to give our red friend here every opportunity to be reasonable. He turned back to Red Bear. Speaking of the widow and her brat, where are they? I've got unfinished business with both of them. They're under my protection. That's all you need to know. Protection. Callahan tasted the word like it was bitter. From a man who couldn't even protect his own wife and child, I heard that story savage. How you failed them when they needed you most. Red Bear's composure cracked slightly, pain flashing across his features. Callahan pressed his advantage. That's right, I know all about your past failures. How you were off playing scout for the army while soldiers were butchering your family. How you came home to find your wife dead and your daughter vanished. Some protector you turned out to be. Little Wolf tensed, ready to fight, but Red Bear held up a warning hand. You're trying to provoke me into doing something stupid. It won't work. Maybe not. But I've got other ways of getting what I want. Callahan gestured to his men, who began spreading out in a wide circle around the small group of defenders. See, I don't actually need to fight you. I just need to wait. Eventually, you'll get hungry or thirsty or careless. And when you do, I'll have what I came for. And what exactly did you come for? Callahan's smile returned colder than winter wind. The woman, for starters. She owes me a debt that needs paying. The child, too. She's got value beyond her mother's obligations. But most of all, I came for this valley. Prime real estate like this don't stay empty forever. Red Bear felt puzzle pieces clicking into place in his mind. This isn't about Maya or Emma at all, is it? You've been planning to take this land all along. They were just convenient excuses. Smart savage. Yes, I've had my eye on this valley for months. Your legal claim is solid, I'll give you that. But legal claims don't mean much when the claimant is dead. The threat hung in the air, like smoke from a funeral pyre. Red Bear understood now that this confrontation was never going to end with negotiation or compromise. Callahan had come here to commit murder, and he had enough men to ensure success. Last chance, Callahan announced loudly. Bring out the woman and child sign over your deed to this property, and maybe some of you walk away from this alive. Red Bear's answer was to draw his war lance, its steel point gleaming in the afternoon sun. Little Wolf and the other warriors followed suit, weapons appearing in their hands with practiced ease. So be it, Callahan said with satisfaction. Boys, light them up. The valley erupted in gunfire. Deep in the mine tunnels, Maya and Emma heard the distant sound of battle and pressed forward with renewed urgency. The torch Maya carried threw dancing shadows on the rough stone walls, creating an environment that was both beautiful and terrifying. Emma had taken the lead, following some instinct that seemed to guide her steps. This way, Mama, she said confidently, turning down a passage that looked identical to a dozen others they'd passed. How can you be sure? Maya asked, trying to keep the worry out of her voice. The blue lights, Emma replied matter-of-factly. Can't you see them? Maya peered into the darkness ahead, but saw nothing except the flickering illumination of their torch. Yet Emma moved with such certainty that Maya had no choice but to trust her daughter's perception. The tunnel began to slope downward, and soon they could hear the sound of running water. The air grew cooler and more humid, carrying scents of deep earth and hidden springs. Strange formations jutted from the ceiling and walls, not the result of human mining, but carved by millennia of patient water flow. We're getting close, Emma announced. I can feel it. Feel what, sweetheart? Emma paused, her young face serious as she considered the question. The heart of the mountain, the place where all the songs come from. Blue Owl told me about it. She called it the Singing Cave. Maya had heard that name before, whispered among the Cheyenne with reverence bordering on awe. According to legend, it was a sacred site where the spirits of the earth gathered to hold council. Warriors seeking vision, healers needing guidance, and children preparing for their adult names would sometimes venture there on sacred quests. But legend also warned that the cave protected itself from those who approached with impure intentions. Strange accidents befell the unworthy. Cave-ins, flash floods, toxic gases that could kill in minutes. Maya prayed that her love for Emma and desire to protect her family would be enough to grant them safe passage. The tunnel opened suddenly into a vast underground chamber that took Maya's breath away. Crystalline formations caught and reflected their torchlight, creating the illusion of stars scattered across a midnight sky. The underground stream flowed through the center of the space, its waters so clear they seemed like liquid glass. But most remarkable of all were the walls themselves. Every surface was covered with pictographs, thousands of images painted in mineral pigments that had somehow retained their vivid colors despite the passage of countless years. Animals, human figures, celestial symbols, and abstract designs that seemed to pulse with life in the wavering light. It's beautiful, Maya whispered. Emma nodded, but her attention was focused on something else entirely. In the center of the chamber, where the stream formed a still pool, A faint blue glow was emanating from the water itself. "The spirit lights," Emma said with satisfaction. "They're showing us the way." Maya watched in amazement as her daughter waded into the pool without hesitation. The water came up to Emma's waist, but she moved through it as if she'd done this 100 times before. The blue glow seemed to intensify around her, creating patterns that were almost hypnotic in their beauty. Come on, Mama," Emma called. "It's safe. The spirits are welcoming us." Maya stepped into the pool, gasping as the cold water soaked through her clothes. But Emma was right. There was nothing threatening about this place. Instead, she felt a deep sense of peace, as if the mountain itself was offering them sanctuary. They waded across to where another tunnel opened on the far side of the chamber. This passage was different from the others, wider with smooth walls that seemed almost polished. And emanating from its depths came the sound Emma had described as singing. It wasn't human voices, but rather a complex harmony created by wind, flowing through natural formations, water dripping in specific rhythms, and the resonance of the stone itself. The effect was hauntingly beautiful, like hearing the mountain's own song. "Papa used to bring me here," Emma said suddenly. "Before the bad time. He would carry me on his shoulders, and we would listen to the mountain sing. I remember now." Maya's heart ached for the pain this family had endured. The violent separation, the years of searching and uncertainty, the weight of grief that had shaped all their lives. But here in this sacred place, with Emma's memories returning and their family finally healing, she felt hope for the first time in months. They followed the singing tunnel for what felt like hours, occasionally stopping to rest or drink from pure springs that bubbled up from hidden sources. Emma's confidence never wavered. And gradually Maya began to trust in whatever force was guiding them. The tunnel finally opened onto a sight that stole Maya's breath. They stood on a natural balcony overlooking a hidden canyon unlike anything she'd ever seen. Towering red cliffs formed perfect amphitheater walls carved into fantastic shapes by wind and water. Ancient cliff dwellings clung to impossible ledges, their empty windows like eyes watching over the canyon floor. But most remarkable of all was the way sound behaved in this space. Every whisper, every footstep, every breath seemed to be amplified and transformed into music. The canyon was a natural acoustic wonder, turning ordinary sounds into something approaching the divine. "The Singing Canyon," Emma said with quiet reverence. "Papa said this is where our people come to speak with the ancestors, where the spirits gather to dance under the stars." Maya understood now why this place was sacred to the Cheyenne. It felt alive, imbued with a presence that went beyond the physical. Standing here, she could almost see the generations of native peoples who had sought wisdom and guidance in this hidden sanctuary. But their moment of awe was interrupted by a new sound. Not the natural music of the canyon, but the harsh crack of gunfire echoing from the direction they'd come. The battle for the valley was still raging, and Red Bear and his warriors were fighting for their lives. "We have to help them," Emma said urgently. Maya looked around the canyon, searching for some way to reach the valley above. The cliff walls were sheer and impossibly high, offering no obvious path to the surface. "How?" she asked helplessly. "We're trapped down here, and even if we could find a way out, what could we possibly do against Callahan's men?" Emma's eyes were bright with an idea that seemed to come from somewhere beyond her 8 years. "The canyon sings Mama, and songs can be heard from very far away. Maybe we can send a message." Maya didn't understand what her daughter meant, but she'd learned to trust Emma's instincts about this place. "What kind of message?" Emma waded into the stream that flowed through the canyon floor, her small hands cupping the crystal-clear water. As she began to sing, first in English, then in Cheyenne words she shouldn't have known, the canyon itself seemed to respond. The sound of her voice was caught and amplified by the natural acoustics, transformed into something that was part human song and part elemental force. The cliff walls resonated with harmonics that made Maya's bones vibrate, and she realized with growing amazement that Emma's song was being carried far beyond the boundaries of the hidden canyon. Meanwhile, above ground, the battle had settled into a deadly stalemate. Red Bear and his warriors had taken cover behind natural barriers, using their superior knowledge of the terrain to offset Callahan's numerical advantage. But ammunition was running low, and several of the defenders were wounded. Callahan seemed content to wait them out, knowing that time was on his side. His men had spread out to completely surround the defenders, cutting off any possibility of escape or reinforcement. Little Wolf crawled over to where Red Bear crouched behind a fallen log, blood seeping from a graze on his shoulder. "We can't hold out much longer," he reported grimly. "Running elks hurt bad, and we're down to our last few rounds." Red Bear nodded, his mind racing through increasingly desperate options. They could try to break through Callahan's line, but that would mean abandoning the valley and everything they'd worked to build. They could surrender, but Callahan had made it clear that surrender would only lead to a slower death. Then, impossibly, a sound began to rise from the earth itself. At first, it was barely audible, a whisper that might have been wind through stone. But it grew stronger, more distinct, until even Callahan's men stopped firing to listen in wonder. It was singing. A child's voice carried on currents of air that seemed to flow up from the very heart of the mountain. Red Bear's eyes widened as he recognized the melody. It was an ancient Cheyenne war song, one that called upon the spirits of earth and sky to aid warriors in their darkest hour. But how could Emma know those words? How could her voice be reaching them from deep underground? The song continued growing in power and complexity as the canyon's acoustics amplified and transformed it. Other voices seemed to join in. Not human voices, but the harmonics of stone and water, wind and flame, creating a chorus that was both beautiful and terrifying. Callahan's men began to look around nervously, their horses dancing skittishly as the otherworldly music washed over them. Morrison tried to maintain his usual swagger, but even he seemed shaken by the phenomenon. "What in the hell is that?" one of the men called out. "Just some Indian nonsense," Morrison replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Probably got a shaman hidden in the rocks somewhere." Callahan himself looked troubled, though he tried to hide it. He'd heard stories about the strange powers attributed to this particular valley, but he dismissed them as superstitious nonsense. Now he was beginning to wonder if there might be some truth to the tales. The singing reached a crescendo, and suddenly the very air seemed to shimmer with energy. Red Bear felt it first. A sensation like lightning dancing along his skin, followed by a deep rumbling that seemed to come from the bowels of the earth itself. "Everyone down!" he shouted instinctively, understanding that something momentous was about to happen. The rumbling intensified, and cracks began to appear in the rocky outcroppings where some of Callahan's men had taken position. One man screamed as the ledge beneath him crumbled, sending him tumbling into a ravine. Another found himself trapped when a boulder shifted, pinning his leg. But the most dramatic change occurred at the valley's entrance, where the narrow pass that provided the only easy access suddenly groaned and collapsed. Tons of rock crashed down, completely blocking the route and trapping Callahan's force inside the valley. "What did you do?" Callahan roared, wheeling his horse toward Red Bear's position. "What kind of sorcery is this?" Red Bear stood slowly, his war lance gleaming in his hands. The mysterious song had given him more than tactical advantage. It had filled him with a sense of purpose and power that went beyond the merely physical. "This is sacred ground," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the chaos. "The spirits don't appreciate uninvited guests." Callahan's response was to spur his horse forward, drawing his pistol as he charged. But his mount, already spooked by the supernatural events, reared and threw him from the saddle. He landed hard, his gun spinning away across the rocky ground. Morrison and several other men tried to rally, but the collapsed pass had created a sense of panic among the hired guns. Some were already trying to find alternate escape routes, while others seemed paralyzed by the realization that they were trapped in a valley that appeared to be actively hostile to their presence. Red Bear advanced on the fallen Callahan, his lance held ready. This was the moment he'd been preparing for. The chance to finally confront the man who'd brought so much pain and fear into their lives. But before he could strike, another voice cut through the chaos. "Stop!" Maya emerged from a hidden fissure in the canyon wall, helping Emma climb up from the underground passages they'd followed. Both were soaked and exhausted, but their eyes blazed with determination. "Don't kill him, Red Bear," Maya said urgently. "Not like this, not in front of Emma." Red Bear paused, his weapon trembling with the effort of restraining himself. "This man destroyed your life. He would have enslaved your daughter. He deserves no mercy." "Maybe not," Maya agreed. "But we deserve better than to become killers. Emma deserves better than to see her father become the kind of man who solves problems with violence." Emma stepped forward, her small hand touching Red Bear's arm. "Papa," she said quietly, "the mountain spirits told me something important. They said that true strength isn't about defeating your enemies. It's about protecting what you love." Red Bear looked down at his daughter, seeing wisdom in her young eyes that humbled him. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. "You're right, little star. Both of you are right." Callahan struggled to his feet, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. "This isn't over," he snarled. "I'll find a way out of here, and when I do..." "No, you'll what?" Maya interrupted. "Bring more men. Try again. How many times are you willing to fail before you accept that this valley doesn't want you here?" Morrison had managed to retrieve Callahan's fallen pistol and was creeping closer, hoping to turn the situation around with a surprise attack. But Emma noticed his movement and called out a warning in Cheyenne. Little Wolf, who'd been circling around the confrontation, struck like a hunting cat. His war club connected with Morrison's skull in a blow that dropped the enforcer like a felled tree. The pistol clattered harmlessly away. With their leader captured and their primary enforcer unconscious, the remaining hired guns lost what little fight they had left. One by one, they threw down their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. "What happens now?" one of them asked nervously. Red Bear looked to Maya and Emma, then to Blue Owl, who had emerged from hiding to assess the situation. The old woman's eyes were bright with approval at the way the confrontation had been resolved. "Now we wait," Red Bear announced. "The pass will remain blocked until the spirits decide to clear it. That could be days or weeks or longer. In the meantime, you're guests in this valley. Uninvited guests, but guests nonetheless. You'll be fed and given shelter, but you'll also work for your keep and show proper respect for this sacred place." Callahan's face was purple with outrage. "You can't keep us here. This is kidnapping." "This is justice," Blue Owl said calmly. "You came here with violence in your hearts, seeking to steal what wasn't yours. The mountain has decided to teach you a different way." Over the following days, a strange routine developed in the hidden valley. Callahan's men stripped of their weapons, and their leader's authority gradually adapted to life under Cheyenne hospitality. Some proved sullen and uncooperative, but others seemed almost relieved to be free of their violent obligations. Emma threw herself into learning everything she could about her heritage. Blue Owl taught her traditional stories and songs, while Red Bear showed her tracking skills and horsemanship. Maya found herself learning alongside her daughter, gaining deep appreciation for the complexity and beauty of Cheyenne culture. But the most remarkable transformation was in Emma herself. Day by day, she seemed to grow more confident in her identity as both Dancing Star and Emma. She moved between English and Cheyenne with increasing fluency, and her understanding of the spiritual world around her deepened in ways that amazed even Blue Owl. "She has the gift," the elder told Red Bear one evening as they watched Emma leading a group of former hired guns in a traditional children's game. "The ability to see and hear things that others miss. With proper training, she could become a powerful medicine woman." Red Bear felt pride and concern in equal measure. She's still just a child. I don't want her to carry burdens that are too heavy for her shoulders. The spirits choose their own vessels. Blue Owl replied. Our job is not to decide her path, but to help her walk it safely. Maya overheard their conversation and added her own perspective. Emma's always been special. Even before I knew about her heritage, I could see that she had an unusual connection to the world around her. She talks to animals like they can understand her, and sometimes I swear they do. Their peaceful interlude was interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected visitor. Colonel Matthews of the Territorial Army rode into the valley alone, his hands raised to show he came in peace. His presence caused immediate tension among both the Cheyenne and Callahan's men, though for different reasons. I heard about your situation, Matthews said without preamble. Figured it was time someone with authority stepped in before things got completely out of hand. Callahan immediately began protesting his innocence and demanding military intervention to secure his release. But Matthews silenced him with a look that could have frozen fire. Shut up, Callahan. I've been investigating your operations for months. The territorial governor wants answers about your business practices, your treatment of settlers, and your alleged connections to certain unsavory government officials. Red Bear studied the colonel carefully. Matthews had a reputation for fairness and honesty, rare qualities in territorial administration. If he'd come here seeking truth rather than simply supporting the interests of white settlers, there might be hope for a peaceful resolution. What do you want to know? Red Bear asked. Matthews dismounted and accepted the offer of coffee and a place by the fire. Everything. Start with how a known cattle baron ended up trapped in a valley that most people don't even know exists. Over the next several hours, Red Bear, Maya, and even some of Callahan's former men told their stories. The colonel listened without interruption, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. His expression grew increasingly grim as the full scope of Callahan's crimes became clear. Forced marriage, child labor, illegal land seizures, murder. Matthews summarized when they'd finished. Callahan, you've been a busy man, and a stupid one. Did you really think you could operate with impunity indefinitely? Callahan's bravado had completely evaporated. I was just trying to build something. To bring civilization to this wilderness. Everything I did was for the greater good. Whose greater good? Maya asked sharply. Certainly not mine or Emma's or the families you drove off their land. Matthews nodded. The territorial government has been receiving complaints about your methods for months. We've been building a case waiting for enough evidence to move against you. This situation has provided more than enough. Emma, who had been listening quietly to the adult conversation, suddenly spoke up. What happens to the men who were just following orders? Some of them aren't bad people. They were just scared and needed work. The colonel looked at her with surprise and growing respect. That's a very wise question for someone so young. What do you think should happen to them? Emma considered carefully before answering. I think people should have a chance to choose a better path. If they promise to never hurt innocent people again, maybe they could stay here and learn a different way to live. Matthews smiled. You'd make a fine judge someday, young lady. That's exactly the kind of wisdom this territory needs more of. Red Bear felt his chest swell with pride at his daughter's compassion and intelligence. She was indeed becoming a bridge between worlds, helping others see possibilities beyond conflict and retribution. The resolution of the crisis took several more days to arrange. Matthews sent word to the territorial capital, and eventually a full investigation team arrived to document Callahan's crimes and take him into custody. The mountain spirits seemed to approve of these developments because the blocked pass suddenly cleared itself one morning, allowing normal travel to resume. Most of Callahan's former men accepted the offer to face territorial justice in exchange for cooperation with the investigation. A few, however, chose to remain in the valley as hired hands drawn by the prospect of honest work and the peaceful way of life they discovered there. Morrison, surprisingly, was among those who stayed. The blow to his head had left him with gaps in his memory and a much gentler disposition. He seemed genuinely remorseful about his past actions and eager to make amends. "Don't rightly remember being the kind of man folks say I was," he told Red Bear one day while helping repair damage from the rock slide. "But if I done those things, then I owe a debt that'll take the rest of my life to pay off." Emma had taken a particular interest in Morrison's rehabilitation, perhaps seeing in him a challenge worthy of her growing spiritual gifts. She would sit with him in the evenings, teaching him Cheyenne words and stories, helping him discover aspects of himself that had been buried under years of violence and cynicism. Child's got a gift for healing more than just the body, Blue Owl observed. She's learning to heal hearts and souls too. As autumn approached, the valley settled into a new rhythm. Red Bear had officially adopted Maya as his wife in a traditional Cheyenne ceremony, creating the stable family unit that Emma had always craved. Maya threw herself into learning her new role, discovering that she had natural talents for traditional crafts and healing arts. Emma continued to grow in wisdom and spiritual understanding, guided by Blue Owl and encouraged by her parents. She was learning to use her gifts responsibly, understanding that power came with obligations to help and protect others. The story might have ended there, with justice served and family reunited in peaceful prosperity. But fate had one more test in store for them. Word reached the valley that a group of Cheyenne refugees was approaching from the east, fleeing persecution and seeking sanctuary. Among them was an old warrior named Standing Bear, who carried news that would change everything once again. "The government is planning to move all remaining Cheyenne to reservations in the south," Standing Bear reported grimly. "They say this territory must be cleared for white settlement. No exceptions will be made." Red Bear felt his world tilt once again. "But we have legal title to this land. Treaties guarantee our right to live here." Standing Bear's laugh was bitter as winter wind. "Treaties are paper. The government has decided that paper burns easily when it becomes inconvenient." Maya watched her husband's face as he absorbed this news, seeing the old pain and anger threaten to resurface. She understood that everything they'd built was once again in jeopardy, that their hard-won peace might be nothing more than a brief respite before the next storm. But Emma surprised them all by stepping forward with calm determination. "Then we fight," she said simply. "Not with guns and violence, but with truth and the power of this sacred place. The spirits showed us how to protect the valley before. They'll show us again." Red Bear knelt before his daughter, taking her small hands in his weathered ones. "Fighting the government is different from fighting men like Callahan Little Star. They have armies, lawyers, politicians who can change laws to suit their purposes." Emma's eyes blazed with the same spiritual fire that had called down the rock slide. "But we have something they don't have. We have the truth, and we have each other, and we have the spirits of this land on our side. That has to count for something." Maya felt tears threaten as she listened to her daughter's words. Emma was right. They did have truth and family, and the power of the sacred valley. Whether that would be enough to stand against the full might of the territorial government remained to be seen. But looking around at the faces gathered in their small circle, Red Bear's determined features, Blue Owl's ancient wisdom, Standing Bear's weathered resolve, even Morrison's reformed earnestness, Maya felt hope stirring in her chest. They'd survived Callahan's assault through unity and spiritual strength. They'd turned enemies into allies through compassion and justice. If they could do that, perhaps they could find a way to preserve their home and their way of life against even greater odds. The future was uncertain, full of challenges that would test everything they'd learned about themselves and each other. But they would face those challenges together as a family bound not just by blood, but by choice love and shared commitment to something greater than themselves. Emma looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, her hand unconsciously touching the dream catcher at her throat. Somewhere in the vastness above, she could hear the faint echo of singing. The voices of ancestors calling across time, offering guidance and strength for the battles yet to come. Dancing Star smiled and took her parents' hands, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. She was home, she was loved, and she was exactly where she belonged. The mountain spirits had kept their promise to bring her family together, and now it was her turn to help protect the sacred valley that had sheltered them all. The story of Red Bear, Maya, and Dancing Star was far from over. If anything, it was just beginning. But they faced the future with confidence born of trial and triumph, knowing that love and justice and spiritual strength could overcome even the greatest obstacles. In the hidden valley, where ancient songs echoed off canyon walls and spirit lights danced in underground streams, a family had found its way home. And home, they had learned, was worth fighting for, with everything they possessed. The wind carried their prayers up to the stars, where the spirits of generations past smiled down in approval. The sacred land would endure, as it always had. The people who loved it would find a way to remain, as they always had. And in the heart of a remarkable little girl, who had bridged two worlds with wisdom beyond her years, the future itself was taking shape. A future where different peoples could live together in harmony, where justice could prevail over greed, and where the power of family could overcome any challenge. Dancing Star closed her eyes and listened to the mountain's eternal song, adding her own voice to the chorus that had welcomed her home. Tomorrow would bring new tests and new opportunities. Tonight, surrounded by love and protected by spirits both ancient and eternal, she was exactly where she was meant to be. The story continued, as all the best stories do, in the hearts and dreams of those who believed that love, justice, and courage could change the world. One family, one valley, one sacred moment at a time.